I think the Tamazight movements have progressed over the 8 years since the start of the revolution, when it first emerged in 2011. And at the moment, the Amazigh movement creating new demands, but also creating new ways of activism within the limited space of shrinking space that's going on in Libya because of course, the security and the conflict situation. However, it's for the first time since 2011, it's for the first time since 2016, gender equality, for instance, is one of their main demands and one of their priorities, which is we can see alongside of other cultural and social rights, such as the Amazigh, recognizing the Amazigh language as an official language still continues a struggle for Amazigh women. Also, the political participation within the current peace process that is held in Libya. It's also something that the Amazigh women and the Amazigh women movement advocate in all regions and local, but also in the capital of Tripoli, to kind of have voices for themselves within the creation of the modern state of Libya. It affects a lot. During my presentation within the conference, I've said that many organizations, many activists, many community leaders have withdrawn the civil society and went back to houses or even flee the country because of the conflict. But it's not only the conflict that happens in daily life, but also because of the rise of extremism in Libya, religious extremism, and also political oppression against women, but also in particular Amazigh women, where they're sometimes threatened by their lives. Many of our members within the movement were actually held, interrogated within by militias because of their activities in Tripoli, or because of their activities within the country. One thing actually, when we try to officialize ourselves, for instance, we have to say that we are the Libyan women movement, not the Amazigh women movement. Officially, actually, it's kind of for them, if you gonna say an Amazigh name, you have to translate it, and you have to say it in Arabic, so in order for any activities to be official. So the conflicts affect everything from the daily lives to activism, but also to the personal safety of any members, of any activists who within the Amazigh women movement in particular. I think that is I think it has advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages, of course, that many Amazigh people, Libyan Amazigh people in the diaspora, or even Amazigh people in the diaspora and international, they of course they affect through more support in social media, for instance, because now through social media we're not one community, we're a wider community where each one can participate in transmitting knowledge, but also transmitting resources as well, like as funds, but also resources as talents. Their kind of either knowledge or their cultural expressions or arts. However, it's also a disadvantage because people think of them as that they don't exist in the realities of Amazigh women, that they're not on the ground, that people really need not only technology, because technology can has limited change. However, the social change should be being within the ground, and I think that is why many people find an advantage and also positive, but also negative in some ways. But for us as a movement, I think it's always positive to transfer the message, because most of the times Amazigh women they don't have the access to spaces, and the Amazigh and international community in diaspora, they can transfer the message to international leaders and key actors who are involved in Libya, either inside or outside. I think there are a lot of problems, but I think if I would say it's like, as the Amazigh women movement also share the struggle of the Amazigh right and the Amazigh constitutional rights in particular. The Libya have issued the new draft of the constitution, which still emanates Amazigh language as a main language, official language, as the demand of the Amazigh and Amazigh women in Libya. But also it did not pay any particularities to Amazigh women within the constitution. They only talk about women, Libyan man. They never really specify that Amazigh women in particular, for instance, when you talk about gender-based violence, they need translation for gender-based violence issues. If you want to protect them through your laws, you have first to speak their language and kind of translate these information. These kind of issues, these challenges, does not translate not in the constitution, which is the mother of the laws, or even the laws. There's even not prospect of changing or creating new laws to protect the Amazigh women rights in various issues. The second, I think, demand is political participation. Even though I think this is a struggle shared by women in general in Libya, but in particular Amazigh women, because in order to make a change, you have also to be a decision maker, not only uplifting the hope and working in the society as activists or within movements or in schools as teachers or as doctors, but also as decision making to create policies and to create not only to create policies but also to translate the reality that women are dealing with, the Amazigh women are dealing with, and translate it within the decision making process. For instance, right now we have the Libyan National Conference, and in this Libyan National Conference I can challenge you that there are very, very few women in the conference, and there are none at all Amazigh women within this process. I think violence is always a sensitive issue for women in general. Nobody wants to talk it because of these social stigma that comes around it. That is, it's always attached with the honor of women, and the honor of women is attached by honor of the family. And these gender harmful norms been shifting. Of course, as Amazigh society, we proud ourselves to be a society that value and respects women and has women's rights at the center of their narrative. And I think tackling this, it's not an easy task, because there's no, for instance, women's shelters where women can go to if they're survivors. So if you speak, there's no police authorities to actually speak. And if there is a police authorities local, they will advise you not to. And most of the times, the women, they don't speak the language. So even if they want to not speak with someone from the locals, they cannot actually speak with someone unless they know Amazigh. And with intersectionality, I think a lot of people right now, and this is one of our role in the movement, is to bring this international discourse that you cannot talk about women if you don't talk about women with diverse identities, that you cannot talk about tackle gender-based violence or other sexist issues without tackling their identities, because it's the reason that these women are located in such urban areas that they don't have access to proper education or access to proper health care or access to all of these information that's happening, or even events, opportunities that are happening in the capital. It's hindering them of their participation. So as women in the national discourse, we should think about that, and we should think about that there is no gender equality unless all women in all the country are actually having this privilege of being equal to their fellow women and to their fellow men. And I think it's very challenging because people are always afraid that you have this one space and you have this one thing that you have to do. Either you speak about Amazigh language or you speak about your gender, because you have so much little space and little voice that you cannot do it all. And when you try to actually think about, but the system does it all. The system kind of works in these intersectional ways where they oppress you because you're Amazigh and they oppress you because of your gender. So if the system does it, we can also solve the issue in these intersectional ways. I think one of the things that we always call for is always participation. And when we're talking about participation in all areas, and political participation and civil society participation, in ensuring the space for these women and in the movement, that actually space is there for them as Amazigh women. And this can be created either by funding or also, but this is created by support, by conferences such as these, forums, such a meeting, where Amazigh women in Libya and our Amazigh women of the region, they can discuss and learn and from each other best practices to move forward. I think a second one, I would say an action point is to support the current campaigns that is going on. For instance, in the movement, they're going on for a quota for Amazigh women to be presented within the peace political talks, but also in the national elections that affecting the country. That at least within the quota of Amazigh, that at least one seat should be ensured for women, and within the quota of women, at least one seat, because there is quota in Libya. So at least in these quotas of women, one seat at least that is ensured for Amazigh women from any area in Libya. I think the third thing is about international participation and international participation spaces. Like, for instance, there are so many international community events that is held about Libya and about Libya process. These things cannot happen if you're excluding one of really you great citizens, which is Amazigh women, which is they constitute the majority or all the half of the Amazigh community. So this is essential to kind of solve and also to listen to them. And of course, the last but not least, the Amazigh language. We're still struggling with officialization of the Amazigh language. It's very, very important. We need to speak our language. We need to learn our language in schools, and we need for the government to pay attention for that, and especially to create laws that incorporate the Amazigh language within different legal frameworks. I always want to think positively as a civil society. I always think that change will happen because we have a vision. And I think this is one of the things essential in our movements, because both of us, all of our members work in different organizations, but also we work within the movement itself. And we have this strategy of a peaceful Libya, that recognize all of their citizens, regardless of their diverse race, ethnicity, but also their sexual orientation, hopefully, in some point. But I think currently the political process is so vague, and this is because of the militia and the weapons that are currently going on in Libya. So this armament, for instance, is a key for the future of Libya to actually, and now being a feminist talking about this armaments, people say, oh, why are you talking about this armament? But this is something that we actually talk about within the movement. Everyone talks about man disarmament and militia disarmament, because the women violence is the one violence that's affecting women right now in Libya. And I think it's so difficult for me to see where is the what and where is who. However, I'm hopeful that in the end we can create like kind of solution, but that only happen with the inclusion of all the society. And this has not been happening in Libya, that the inclusion of all members of society, when it comes to Amazigh people, Tsabu people, but also Amazigh women, in the heart of these political changes.